morning, everybody. Test, hello, hello, hello. Good morning. All right, there we go. Good morning. Thank you for having me out. I love coming to Berlin. I love the fantastic people here, and I love the sausage. It's so great. What I wanted to talk about today is actually kind of my first attempt at talking about a non-technical topic. I really enjoy talking about technical. A lot of the talks that I give are focused around how to be more efficient with code, how to be more communicative with code, and how to be just descriptive with code. But recently I've been having a lot of conversations with some very intelligent and very smart people about the DevOps methodology and how it gets implemented. And it's not a fault of any one person, but what ends up happening is we're technologists, okay? And at the end of the day, we really love playing with technology. Who loves playing with the technology that they've got in DevOps? I mean, it's been amazing, right? The last couple of years have just created a ton of amazing tools to help our day-to-day life. The challenge, though, is in crunch situations or business growth, what ends up happening is we default to that love. And we forego all the other pieces that are necessary in order to truly make a DevOps methodology successful in your business. And it's not it's nature, right? Our default is we love the tech, and that, let the people in the process stuff, let the managers handle that, right? That's not our business. In reality, what I want to suggest is it is our business. It is our business to have really frank conversations about how people and process integrate into the overall workflow. Because what we're ultimately trying to do is change the game here, right? All of what we're doing here is changing the fundamental game about how we do delivery for operations, delivery for businesses, and provide business value. But again, right, it's the technology that we keep falling back to. We want to talk about people and process today. Process, I believe, is important because it helps with communication. And it's often a dirty word in a lot of places that I've been. So where are the people parts, right? It's today I've noticed a lot of people end up coming into the DevOps community because we're kind of the autodidactic folks of the world, right? We're curious, we're inherently looking for the better solution. But in reality, there's a huge swath of people, there's a huge swath of businesses that aren't even looking at this problem yet because they're kind of like waiting in the process and like looking to see how well it's going to go, right? So businesses that are kind of starting to latch onto this, like big giant enterprises, they're still 5, 7, even 10 years behind the curve currently. And they're just now getting into this. And so it's been really great to have all the talks here talk about the integration of people and process into the entire DevOps methodology. But again, we often lose sight of the forest for the trees. So that's what I want to talk about today is in my career so far, I have had the pleasure of working with a lot of really smart companies as a CTO as a service, working as engineers doing DevOps methodology. And what I've picked up over the years are kind of lessons about what actually makes success. So a lot of the talks that we've had today have been, here are the things we need to be mindful of. I want to talk about the pitfalls and the things that happen and the things that do make you successful. Right? When the rubber hits the road, what are you actually thinking about? What is it you're actually delivering? What is it that you're actually doing? So hi, my name is James Fryman, and I work at GitHub. You may have heard of them. But I want to start with this again, right? DevOps, we all know this, right? I think this has even been said this week. DevOps is not a technology problem. DevOps is fundamentally a business problem at core. Right? What we're trying to do, I believe, fundamentally, if you're doing DevOps right, is you're giving back to the people that make them back the power to be powerful. Right? There's an adage that I give often. There's 3 classes of people in the world at any given point. Right? There's the warriors, the warrior class, right? Let's call them the military, okay? There's the ruling class, we can call them the politicians and whatnot. And then there's the cleric class, and that's us, the magicians. And everybody just kind of looks to us and says, go and work your magic, right? Well, what we want to do is we want to work our magic, not in a sense that I'm making my job easier or faster. I'm making their experience better. and making them understand that it's not magic, it's science. And there's real work and real value to what we're doing here. So it boils down so far. I was trying to find really good ways to like, what is it that actually this distills into? And I think it boils down to 3 main points. First of which is you have to own it, right? If you are not owning end-to-end what DevOps means for your enterprise or for your organization, you're going to run into some pitfalls, right? Things like, it's great that I have a new cool tool like Puppet, but who's using it? Am I using it? Or is the CSR using it? Or is the finance person using it? Why would they need to use it? Are you thinking about that? Need to be. And that brings me to my first point. You have to make these things accessible to everybody in your organization, right? And what I mean by making things accessible, I mean we want to give them the power of rapid delivery, right? We need to be teaching computers how to be efficient so that other people can use them. And one of the really great ways that I've seen this be successful is a thing called ChatOps. Who's heard of ChatOps? Fair number of people, okay? ChatOps is fundamentally a communication structure about how to work with computers, how to interface with computers, how to communicate with others, about what's happening with computers, and a bunch of other things that go into that too, like certainly like rapid delivery and making my job easier. But at the core of it, what ChatOps is ChatOps is providing a common interface in the same communication channel that you're having day to day. So today what happens in a lot of organizations is something bad will happen, or something good will happen, or something needs to happen, right? You get a ticket created, and some guy will go off into a corner and do his thing. And it's magic. It just shows up. Oh, I have my new development environment. Oh, I have my new staging environment. Oh, I got this new server. Oh, it's fantastic. But nobody knows what actually happened. What ChatOps does is it provides the ability for that visibility. Suddenly, when somebody comes in and says, I need X, you can do it right in front of them. Not only can it get done, they see the feedback almost instantaneously. Ah, I need a new user created. Well, let me just take care of that for you. Type this in. Okay, cool. Oh, the user's created, fantastic. Okay, instantaneous feedback. Immediately you're winning, right away. And it's easy to do, right? I don't want to go too deep into what ChatOps actually is. There's a number of fantastic talks I'm going to link to at the end. I highly encourage you to look at them, figure out how you can apply ChatOps to your organization. There's a lot of really cool tools. Hubot and Lita are kind of the 2 robots that are leading this ChatOps methodology today. Hubot is a GitHub product written in CoffeeScript, which is really interesting. When I first saw Hubot, I was not excited about Hubot at all because it's written in CoffeeScript. Who likes CoffeeScript? Exactly, right? Okay, right? Sorry, I'm a Ruby guy. But what was really interesting with CoffeeScript and what it does is suddenly now you have a language that people can approach. Like right, wrong, indifferent, JavaScript's here to stay, right? And people can easily grok JavaScript and start to write plugins for this thing almost instantaneously. A web developer can suddenly write ChatOps stuff. A guy in finance can write a really cool script to go get kittens online, right? Okay, that's neat. But they can also do things like, I'm going to go provision a staging environment. Just let that sink in for a second. What happens if your developer came to you and said, I need an entire staging environment? How long does that actually take you? Maybe if you're doing DevOps right, not too long, but what if they could do it? And this is actually pretty easy to implement. So as you go and you read these things, and you look up ChatOps and whatnot, and you ping me later on the road and say, hey, I'm going down this road, I need some help, or I'm enjoying this, and tell me some good success stories. But the actual implementation is really interesting. And this is, again, a culture and communication issue, okay? So as you're writing your ChatOps interfaces, you make some interface, whatever that interface may be. We talked about this yesterday. We had a really good interactive session, I think that's what they're called, about ChatOps. And what it does is focus on creating very small primitives, okay? Go get hosts, go create users, go create servers, whatever that may be. And chaining those things together in the Unix methodology, do one thing, do it really well, and propagate it. So you make an interface. You make these very small pieces. And when somebody comes to you, you just do it right in front of them. Don't even talk about it. You don't say, hey, I'm going to go do this thing for you, or look at this really cool tool I just built. Oh, it's amazing. You just do the thing right in front of them. It becomes a process kind of thing, becomes a people kind of thing. Doesn't focus on the tool. And eventually, you'll do this over and over again. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, maybe not even like the 20th time. But eventually, someone will come and go, hey, I notice that every time I ask you for X, you just type this command in. Can I do that? Whoa, oh, yes, please, just try it. Just type it in. How will it go? And suddenly now you've got power. A colleague of mine implemented this at a bank firm of his. What they did is they created the card printers. You know, when you get credit cards, they have to come from somewhere, right? This company printed them, so he had a lot of money available, and CSRs would constantly come to him and say, look, I need to know the status of printer at company X. Does it have enough cards left? Do we need to send them additional stock? Is it working? Has it failed recently? Bunch of questions, right, that have to do with actual business value, because if SLAs aren't met, they need to provide refunds. If they want to be on top of things, if the cards are like almost out, we want to be proactively sending them things. And CSRs would come to my friend and say, hey, what's the status of printer X? Hey, what's the status of printer Y? And my friend, and like hopefully all of you being a lazy admin, wrote a script to answer that question for him. And within 3 months, he wasn't bothered. The CSRs would come in and he'd watch them all day long, just do what they needed to do. That's power. You're giving back the power to the people that are running and working your company. It's no longer about you doing your job faster or better. It's about them. And you keep doing this over and over again. Really good technique to do is take the pieces that commonly get asked of you and just making these small scripts. And eventually you get the primitives and you start chaining them together and it becomes really super powerful. Another colleague of mine was on his way to the airport one time and he got an alert on his phone. He pulls out his phone. Oh no, GitHub's getting DDoSed. So naturally, unlocks his phone, types a command into the chat room, and suddenly we've enabled mitigation, changed our BGP routes, notified incident commanders of the situation, and told our business and our customers of the status. One command. Done. Wouldn't you want that kind of power? So after you do this, and everything's running well, treat yourself. Go get a beer. Now, this is not easy, right? You don't just get this overnight. And one of the other things that I want to kind of emphasize is a communication strategy that needs to happen around this. And I liken this to building hammers. So another friend of mine, I have all these stories, tons of stories. Another friend of mine has a blacksmith friend, and he showed up one day and said, look, what are you doing today? He says, like, I'm going to build a sword. Oh, awesome, I want to build a sword too. Oh yeah, we're going to build a sword. So they sit down and they start working on the first tool. The first hammer. Now, the first hammer is a test. It's a spike. When we're doing our things, we're creating chat ops, when we're creating these new interfaces, it's an idea. We don't really know how it's going to go. It requires some experimentation. Maybe you fail. It's okay. You haven't defined the problem yet. You have to define the problem before you can go solve the problem. And sometimes you may not have the context of the entire picture. So start small. Create a hammer. So my friend says, awesome, let's go build this sword. And Black says, no, wait a second. We have to build a second hammer. So we take the first hammer and we build the second hammer out of it. And we get a progressively better hammer. Now we've refined this solution. We've done our experimentation. We kind of know how people interact with it. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. So we create our second hammer. Awesome. So my friend says, okay, now can we build the sword? He says, nope, not yet. We got to build the third hammer. Now this is the awesome hammer, right? This is the hammer that's just like, oh yes, I'm going to go build this sword. This is the code that's super powerful. BGP convergence, allowing you to spin up entire development environments just at whim, to be able to manage and view entire data points about your infrastructure and organization in chat ops, in context of everything else that you're doing. Very powerful stuff. So build hammers and know it's okay to iterate over these things. You're not going to get it right overnight, but constant working, constant practice, and constant awareness will get you to the third hammer. The second thing that I think we need to do when owning it is knowing the code. It still surprises me how many people that run operations in an organization don't actually know what the code is doing. They're just keeping it up based on what the developer said. If somebody came to you and said, I need to create a development environment, okay, I'm going to keep using this example, and they told you the instructions on how to do that, would you feel really good about that? Would you feel like you're doing something well? You're just kind of executing a task. Computers can just execute tasks. But one of the things that drives us in this world is a purpose, autonomy, and mastery. One of these things to be really good at what you do is understanding the code that runs in your environment, understanding the language that runs in your environment. Because there's that silo wall between you and the developers that often exists. And the minute you can speak their language, hey, I noticed this core dump. Hey, I noticed this exception. Hey, I noticed that this thing is running as less efficiently as possible. Well, now you're having a real conversation with the developers. And suddenly that wall actually goes away. Now you're sharing the same language. You're using chat ops. Now you're talking about the same code. You're on the same page. The true power of the DevOps methodology. So know your code. Experiment with your code. Build hammers with the code. Contribute back. The closest I've seen to this in practice today is the site reliability engineer. It kind of seems to be a really good cohesion and a job description that describes how to be good at this. So if you're not quite sure what that looks like, find an SRE job description and learn those skills. The next thing is continual improvement. Even when you get to your third hammer, things change, businesses evolve. And we all know this. But again, during crunch times, you forget these things. And so what I suggest, or what I recommend, is that you constantly be thinking about debt, constantly be thinking about enhancements, constantly be thinking about ways to be more efficient, efficient earlier in the conversation. Keep doing this. All day, right? This is an example of the Deming cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act. And this is a fantastic kind of thought experiment about how to continually think about processes and improving them over the lifetime of your organization. I'm going to include some resources at the end of this. I highly encourage you to read this. But this is really important because now, when you're having this focus on continual improvement, you're growing. You're now providing value to the business. Okay, great, I've automated my job. That's fantastic. I can go sit in the corner and collect my paycheck. Well, that's not how I want to grow my career. Like, I actually want to understand my vertical. And I want to understand how to provide business value to them. And the only way I'm going to do that is continually iterating and continually building these things. So always be improving. Always be improving. The next big point is you got to grow this thing. So you own it, you grow it. And growing it means more than just implementing it, right? And saying, okay, we're DevOps now, I'm certified, we're done, right? You actually have to put effort into this. Conscious, mindful effort every day. And the first one is letting the business use the same tools that you use to make your job efficient. That's interesting. What happens if suddenly the graphite server that you spun up in order to check your servers was also providing metrics for the business, how they were doing? Are you doing that today? Could you do that today? Good. I see some shaking heads. Awesome. Good. Keep doing that. You do those things. Once you have chat ops, once they have graphing, once they're using the same tools you're using, now we're creating a cohesion of sorts. Operations is less about just keeping the servers on. Now you're providing value to the business, starting to really change the game. So if you're not doing this, I challenge you. Like, look at ways that you can use your tools and provide interesting interfaces to how businesses can ingest those. Have you used your paging system to go call and escalate if customers are having a bad time? We do. That's interesting. The monitoring system alerts when customers are low on cards. You know, that's an example. What could you do? The next piece is you have to enable team scaling. And this is where I think is the most interesting piece of one of the most interesting pieces about growing and being kind of a DevOps or whatever we're calling ourselves nowadays. It's that with the context of understanding how the code works and the context of understanding how the platform works and is built, suddenly you kind of have all the keys to the castle. And that's really powerful when you think about it. You've got the keys to the castle, which means that when companies change, you're part of that change, and you're helping drive that change. And that's interesting because of Conway's Law. Who's familiar with Conway's Law? Awesome, a couple people. Conway's Law basically talks about the communication structures that exist between humans. What the piece that we fail to kind of implement and realize is that the communication structures that exist in real life get stamped into our software every day. What ends up happening as a result of that is if your company makes an organizational change, your software may actually fight you because it was built for an old organization structure. So as you dig into the code and your company is making strategic changes to be better from an organizational standpoint or communication standpoint, how can you help dictate the design and architecture of some of this code to help with that, to help foster that change? Got to think about this. You at least be mindful of the fact that when things happen, software has to evolve just as much to adhere to the new communication structures as does the actual organization change that happens. Finally, you have to train the future. And this is really interesting. Like, there are very few companies that I've walked into that have any sort of formal training about how to become better at this DevOps thing, right? It's still, right? We're all just kind of figuring it out today. But the good companies, the ones that are really being successful, are not just throwing people into the fire. They're being mindful about, here are some skills that you should pick up. Here are some things I want you to learn. I want you to be part of this process. It's an inclusive thing. Train the future. Figure out who is interested in these problem sets and actively encourage them to come play in your sandbox. Because the more people we have in this sandbox, I think the more better we're going to be. I'm good at grammar. I'm English. It's totally cool. Finally, we have to share it. And sharing it is the biggest part of this, right? So we're training everybody, we're growing it, we're establishing all these practices, and now we have to share it with us, the organization, and the rest of the world. And this is where process comes in. Now, process gets a horrible rap all day long, right? Who has had a nightmare with ITIL? All right, yes, okay. The reason that nightmares with ITIL happen is because the mindfulness about why the process exists is totally lost, right? Process at the core of it is to implement a fundamental communication structure between humans, right? All of this is about communication at the end. What I want to be able to do with a process is have a known quantity of input, something happen, it could be black magic, but there's a constant and known output, which means that now I have some structure to start to help people kind of mentally model what needs to happen. I now have a structure in order to train people how to become better at what they're doing. I now have the ability to scale rapidly because now we're all talking the same language. It's not a collection of individuals that are running around trying to get things done. Now you've got one common beat, one common drum. So process, I don't think, should be a dirty word. Process should be super lean, and maybe it's only like 1 or 2 steps. But if you have a known input and a known output, that will go a long way in helping further these goals. So think about process. And if you have processes, like, evaluate them. There's a really great colleague of mine was really into processes. I mean, like full-on Six Sigma black belt, and I could not understand for the life of me why he went down this road. And he said to me, the point of this is to find and drive efficiency within the things that we do. So this kind of piggybacks into the previous talk. And that means like looking and critically evaluating often the processes that exist in your business and getting rid of the dirt, getting rid of the cruft, continually improving yourself. So there's a couple links I'll include about lean methodology. I highly encourage you to look at them. You don't need to be an expert at this stuff. It's about being mindful and creating the constructs for people to think about things. And heroes, we can't do that. Lots of organizations I still walk into today have heroes running the shop. With DevOps, comes great power, but with great power comes great responsibility. It's kind of weird. I'm using a superhero method analogy when I'm talking. Don't use superheroes. But it's true. The biggest things in the world are done with groups of people. One man did not put a man on the moon. A bunch of people put a man on the moon. One man does not build a company. A bunch of people build up a company. This is your team. Build the team. Be the team. Grow the team. Be a force multiplier. Right? Your power in all of this. In 10 years, we're going to be having talks about these conversations that we're having. We're going to be the leaders of these movements in organizations all over the place. Be the person that helps other people grow. Be a force multiplier. Make yourself better than one. So, running out of time, I just want to close it up here. Mind the forest. Keep your eye on the bigger picture. There's more than just the tech here. It's really important to be thinking about what works and what doesn't work. Own it. Share it. Grow it. Change the game fundamentally. The value here, the change that we're making is that operations is no longer a cost center. We're an investment. We're an investment for the business. And that's what I want to be. I want to be the guy that enables these things. Because we've got the keys to the castle and we know how to make this happen. Partner with the developers. Partner with your business people. Figure out how to be that investment. So thank you. I think I have a few minutes for questions. No, it must have been good.
Hello.
Yes.
You talk about processes. I think a lot of process somehow overloaded with all the experience from the last 10 years to accumulate every error which ever happens, resulted in an additional check or something else. Do you have an idea how to make these processes much faster, so to get rid of all this old stuff which probably never is necessary again? How to make it smaller and more efficient?
Great question, great question. Another colleague of mine happens to be in HR. Why I'm friends with an HR person I'm still working out. He's a great guy. And he recently started a new company. He had the same problem. It was a big HR handbook. And he walked in and he said, I bet everything in that handbook is reactionary. None of it was actually built to further the company. It was a result of something that happened that we needed to fix. And he said, yeah, oh my gosh, you're right. And you know what he did? He picked it up and he burnt it. No joke. He just picked it up and symbolically burnt it in front of the entire company. Now, I don't suggest like fire sale, right? Obviously, that's a little extreme. Sometimes you may need to be that way. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of asking the hard questions of like, look, do we really need this? So in the Lean methodology, which is a book that is probably in this list here, talks about like, what are the value adds, non-value add necessaries, like the things that need to happen in order to execute and deliver a system. Like, I don't provide business value by spinning up a server. I provide business value by actually having that server run assets, okay? And then there's non-value adds, non-necessary. That's garbage. Get rid of it. Like, take time and look at your processes. When you spell them out on these, I love the Post-it note thing. When you're drawing these things out on the wall, you suddenly like look at, oh, man, I just can get rid of that. And you just pull the Post-it note off the wall. Well, that's easy. Awesome. Now I'm pulling Post-it notes off the wall, and I still have a cohesive process. Just spend some time thinking about it in a way that is easy to model and move around, right? It requires a little bit of rapid interaction, so it's a little bit difficult to do over remote areas. So like if you can do like high bandwidth communication, certainly focus on that. But have a methodology that you can just walk into a room and go, do we need this? Do we need this? Do we need this? Just start pulling things off. Good question. What else? All right. No? Oh.
Just a short question. Why do we get a 404 on this link?
What? Oh no! Well, it's because I'm not connected to the internet. I don't know how that works. Is it really a 404? Oh, goodness. Okay. I tested it last night. Okay. All right. Yes. Oh.
I have a question about the building hammers thingy. How many hammers do you think you will end up building? Like, when should you stop?
Never stop. Right? Again, it's continuous improvement. When you feel good about a hammer, right, you want to put the hammer into production as soon as possible, right? Let people work it, let people run it, and wear the hammer out. Because it'll come naturally. You'll feel like, okay, this hammer's built because I'm no longer editing it. One of the kind of bars that we use for ChatOps to know when it's good to put into production is the idea when we've run it a bunch of times outside of ChatOps without problem. Then you go, okay, well, I know this is going to work. It's a known quantity. Throw it into ChatOps. And then ChatOps obviously ultimately pulls up more things. Then you build and iterate on that hammer. Eventually, the primitive won't need any more work, or will only need work once a year or two when you do like big organizational changes, right? It will feel natural when it just works. So like there's no set, like don't build 50 hammers, right? Build like 1 or 2 and continually iterate on it. Small ships constantly and experiment.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Well, the sword is the DevOps, right? I mean, awesome. All right, I think I'm out of time, so thank you very much again.